I don't think that shy streak is ever going to go away. I just don't let it run the show anymore, is essentially what's happening. I believe that in order to be really captivating, you have to be yourself. So I tell my clients, I want you to have fun on stage. I want you, like, when you're telling a story, relive the experience so that you're not just rattling off like a play by play. I did this and then I did this and I did this. Like, that's just boring. But if you plop yourself in the middle of the story, and this is what I felt, and this is what I was experiencing, this is what I was thinking, like, it becomes a different story that your audience is really experiencing, like as if it was happening right here, right now. Your personality, nobody can duplicate your personality. So I tell people, like, you have to decide on what your speaking style is going to be.
Welcome back to another episode of the Art of Online Business podcast. And if you already listened to the previous episode where we were chit-chatting with Laurie-Ann, who happens to be an expert speaker, well, you're going to like this episode. It's the one that you were waiting for, where she is going to share with us and you speaking tips to become the go-to person in your niche. And lest you think that speaking is just for those who are fortunate enough to, or foolish enough, or brave enough to speak on stage in front of hundreds, you are already speaking on stage. And that would be your videos, your Instagram reels, your YouTube videos, or even your podcast. So let me introduce Laurie-Ann really quick. You can already see her right there. Hi, Laurie-Ann. She's waving at you. But Laurie-Ann is a speaker coach and strategist. She's also an author. She's a reformed, painfully shy gal who accidentally became a professional speaker. Geez. And in the last episode, she shared how it was an airport shooter that ended up motivating her to switch from being a speaking coach for executives and now have an online course, which is quite intriguing. I highly recommend you listen to the previous episode. But, she's been in the industry over 20 years and she works with coaches and consultants to write and deliver captivating presentations to establish credibility, attract ideal clients, and monetize their authority. And Laurie-Ann combines her years as an award-winning professional speaker, executive leadership coach, and her obsession with neuroscience all into her approach for speaking, which you'll get to enjoy pretty soon here. You're also the best-selling author of a book called Rethink Leadership and Rethink Your Leadership. And you're the host of the Be in Demand podcast. Very well named, by the way, Laurie-Ann.
Thank you. There's a reason why it's called Be in Demand.
I mean, I want to be in demand. I think this is a very timely episode because, like, Jamie and I are over here at the beginning of 2025 with our heads down working on our funnel to increase sales of our courses. And yet here you are with a way, speaking skills, speaking tips to become in demand. And I definitely can tell this works based on the little bit you shared in the past episode. Welcome back to our podcast.
So let's just touch on what that means to be in demand. We want people to say, oh, not find me a speaking coach or somebody that can talk about public speaking. We want them to say, oh, you've got to have Laurie-Ann. Like, we want people to call you out by name and not by occupation. Because when they call you out by name, which is what being in demand is, then you're the person, like, they're not interviewing other speakers. They're just bringing you in to speak to their group, their mastermind, their meeting, their conference.
Wow.
Nice.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. Oh, we need someone about this, but we want this person, right? Because they already have that authority built. How do you get to that place then?
Where they call you out by name.
You got to get out there. You got to start speaking. And speaking needs to be redefined. Back in 2020, when that unique situation that we were all in, like, I thought, hey, public speaking meant stages, but that made me redefine that there are so many ways that we have been speaking, that we can be speaking, and your stage needs to be redefined also. And I think stages and speaking needs to be based on your personality. So let me just take, for example, a mom. a stay-at-home mom who's trying to build her business, and she's got 2 little ones, and she has to wait until they take a nap. Now, I have a client who lives on a boat, so she can't say yes to every in-person speaking event. As a matter of fact, she can't even say yes to every virtual event because she has to make sure, well, where are we gonna be? And am I gonna have really good Wi-Fi? To be able to do something like that. So she's, like she's, massaging like how she is still doing this. But those are considerations. So that mom with 2 little ones, she's got to wait till they take a nap and then she can go on, and IG stories could be her stage where she shows up spontaneous when the kids go down, and she can be sharing her tips, her ideas, doing Facebook lives maybe with a friend who's like, okay, the kids are down. Can you jump on now? To be able to create your own stage, and you just start getting known. Now, here's something that I'm noticing, and I'm starting to ask people this question, people that I admire. So I was just at the Podfest conference, and I got an opportunity to talk to John Lee Dumas of, Entrepreneurs on Fire. And he mentioned on stage about public speaking. So, and that it wasn't something that came natural to him, but he's doing a lot of public speaking now. So I asked him, how'd you get into speaking? And I hear this a lot from people. He said, I was actually a fill in for somebody. Some speaker couldn't show up, and a friend who was running the event turned to him and said, could you fill in? Could you speak? Now, I don't know if he was at the event or if this was just a little bit before, but I'm actually bringing him onto my podcast to talk a little bit more about this. But I'm hearing that over and over again, that he was just doing his thing, doing his art, doing his craft, however you want to look at what you do. And somebody asked him, could you come and speak? I love what you're doing. So there's a lot of people out there that they did not mean to become a speaker, but people see you doing some amazing stuff and want you to come talk about it.
Right. Right.
And then you add on the skills later to the audience, captivated long enough. Speaking of Podfest, did you happen to meet Justin Shank?
Uh, yes, I think I did.
Okay. I could reintroduce you if you want to meet him again. He was on this podcast, and he's
Mhm.
I pulled up his bio, so I actually say specifically or say it right, but like he has this podcast and movement called the Growth Now movement, and he's been like a top 8 podcaster for a while. His podcast is huge. Cool, just genuine guy.
Yeah,
He
cool
actually
guy.
just voted on my IG stories because we saw we saw this movie called Wild Robot, and it just made us tear up because it's quite unexpected. The trailers don't even give away how good it is, which is rare.
I saw your story about that too, and I was just like, ooh, I wonder what that's about.
You gotta watch it, honestly. But
It's really
he voted too that he teared up.
He
Like
teared up? Okay.
we're sitting on the couch
Oh,
watching this,
Justin.
and we're just like, oh, this is making me cry. I didn't know this was this kind of movie, but
See, that's what stories can do to audiences. It moves people.
Mhm.
definitely. So I'll introduce you to him.
Yeah.
Um,
So one thing I wanted to say, because you had mentioned this right before we hit record, was that you really just need to be yourself. And I just want to put out there that it sounds like what you're saying is you don't have to be an extrovert to be a great speaker, right? Because like we were just saying, your demeanor is just super chill and you're just you, right? But there's more of like an art to it. So can you share on that a little more? Because you did mention in the previous episode or in your bio that you were painfully shy. And I don't know if you still have kind of maybe that introvert streak, if you will, but what does that mean for personality types and just being you?
I don't think that shy streak is ever going to go away. I just don't let it run the show anymore, is essentially what's happening. I believe that in order to be really captivating, you have to be yourself. So I tell my clients, I want you to have fun on stage. I want you, like, when you're telling a story, relive the experience so that you're not just rattling off like a play by play. I did this and then I did this and I did this. Like that's just boring. But if you plop yourself in the middle of the story, and this is what I felt, and this is what I was I was experiencing, this is what I was thinking, like it becomes a different story that that your audience is really experiencing, like as if it was happening right here, right now. Your personality, nobody can duplicate your personality. So I tell people, like, you have to decide on what your speaking style is going to be. So back in my executive coaching days, I would ask clients very early on, like, can you describe what your leadership style is or what you want it to be so that now we have a place to be moving towards? And they just almost like everybody would say, well, that person is like this. And so they're looking up in the organization. Well, that person's like this. So that must, and they got that promotion. So that must be what I have to be like. And I'd be like, no, that's their leadership style. I want you to decide on your leadership style. So I tell people, pick 3 words or 3 short phrases. How do you want to come off as a speaker? I want to be very genuine. I want to be inspiring. And I don't want to be stuffy. I want people to feel like they know me based on listening to a podcast, based on seeing me speak, whether that's in person or virtually. I just want them to feel like that's the person I want to be friends with. And the only way that that's going to happen is if I bring my 100% real self to the event. And it's a skill, because most of the time, if you're nervous, you're inside your head. You're worried about, what are they thinking? What are they, like, are they going to ask me a question I can't answer? Will they like me? Versus if you're just fully present, I'm not thinking about the past and I'm not thinking about the future. I'm just right here, right now with you. And that will make all the difference, because your audience, they will feel that.
That's good.
Practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. Today, by the way, we're going to practice bachata. So I can become a bachata superstar.
All right, today's the day.
So today's the day. We will practice these
Okay.
steps. So what are some things, Laurie-Ann, that the listener can practice that just make them more engaging and memorable? Speaking tips, if you will, that they can practice as they show up on Instagram or show up on YouTube.
You bet. Okay. So here are some tips that will give you the biggest bang for your buck. And one of them is pausing. You do not have to feel like you have to fill the air with a word continuously. There are a lot of times that you're going to ask a question. And if you start rambling on, or moving on to the next point without giving your audience the space to answer that question, then you ruined like a teachable moment. So pausing is very powerful. Pausing is where we just give our audience space to answer a question, to contemplate what we just said.
Pause.
Intentional pause.
You did that on purpose, didn't you?
I did do that on purpose. But I will admit, with like this is your podcast is audio and visual. You can't have very long pauses with just an audio podcast. So just to be very intentional of what basically what the median is. But if you're doing an IG story, an IG live, some sort of a live stream, creating a video where there is this visual component, you can pause. And the audience is just going to fill that space. Like you're just giving them room to think. So don't be afraid of pausing. Pause, because a lot of times people think, well, if I pause, then the audience is going to think, again, their future thinking. They're going to think, I don't know what I'm going to say. Well, even if you did forget what you were going to say, just keep talking, take a breath, move on, because your audience has no idea what you were about to say that you might have forgotten. So there's a couple.
Okay, all right.
That sounds kind of contradictory, because you think if I'm speaking at something, I should be speaking,
Like,
not
keep going.
pausing. Yeah. Just keep going. But
Yeah. So also the pace at which you speak. So when you speak really, really fast and you keep like you're telling the story, and then we did this and then we did that. If you spoke for an entire hour or even a half hour at this very fast pace, like your audience would be exhausted. Because what's happening to your audience physiologically, increase in heart rate, increase in breathing rate, they might be leaning in, but it's like, oh, like give me a break.
Literally.
Like, yes. So you want to slow down. You might speed up when you're talking about something that's very exciting, that you want the audience to be on the edge of their seats, but then you've got to slow down. And here's what I realized after that particular accident, after I walked away. Like the audience, heart rate's going down, breathing rate's going down. They're relaxing a little bit more into their seat. So you have this control over what you're sharing with people. So vary your tone and vary your pace, because then your audience like isn't expecting that, especially if like you just kind of like you're speaking a little bit soft, and then all of a sudden you pick up the pace. Like it just what just happened? It's just a pattern interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Pattern interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like having a change in the visuals when you're like in the post edit of a video to keep audience retention high. Same sort of thing.
Exact same thing. Our brains are just like, hey, like give me something new, give me something new. Oh, this is interesting. It just keeps people on the edge of their seats, keeps them watching. So that's another one. Another big one, and this is really for
I got a question to go a little deeper on this pacing thing. If we're changing up our pace, is there like what's the ideal pace for the really important information we want to be delivered?
depends on what kind of information we're talking about. Like, is it really technical? So maybe I do want to talk a little slower. But is it exciting? Like some new technology? I'm going to dive really deep into this, but this is going to be something that you're really going to want to like dive into and learn more about before like other people get their hands on this. So now I'm getting people excited about it, but I might, like take my pace down when I'm going through the different steps, because I want people to really hear everything. Like, this is what you need to do for step 1. And here's what you need to consider before entering into step 2. Here are some questions you need to answer.
I feel like a listener might be thinking, so if they're applying this in video, where do you stand as far as bullet pointing what you're saying and then speaking freely, but keeping yourself on pace with the bullet points, or memorizing a signature speech, if you will, word by word?
Good question. So there are a lot of people who really do enjoy memorizing an entire speech. I do believe that the shorter the presentation, like a 5-minute or even a TED Talk, a 15-minute presentation, you really might want to memorize the entire thing, but in a way that not a script, that because we write differently than we speak. So by being able to, with a shorter presentation, essentially, every word counts. So it's really powerful to make sure that you use your time wisely. However, with a regular speech, I actually don't have a lot of people who like to memorize from beginning to end. But there are 2 places that I do recommend that people memorize. That's your beginning and then your ending. So the beginning being your opening and your authority section, and your ending being your call to action for people. Here's why. We all get nervous before we're going to speak. I still get nervous these days, even like just before I'm about to go live and like with an audience in somebody's group. But if I know exactly what I'm going to say for those first 5 to 6 minutes, like the butterflies just go away. And then I can get into my groove for that value section of the presentation. And then the reason why I say to memorize the ending, because you will know exactly how long it takes for you to close. So I always tell speakers, like, you should be looking up at a clock, knowing that, okay, my close takes 8 minutes. and I can see that it's 10 of. I would rather you end a little bit earlier than go overtime. So you see that you got 10 minutes left in the room, so it's you can go right into your close. And by memorizing it, I always want to make sure that my students and my clients get their call to action inside of their presentation and not feel like they rush through it, because if they rush through it or they don't even have time for it, then the audience doesn't get that opportunity to take that next step and continue learning with you.
Hmm.
Well said. Well said.
Right. Right.
Before I asked about this, you were on the verge of sharing another tip.
I was one that surprises people.
One that surprises people?
One that
Right.
surprises people,
Surprise us.
yeah. That like
All
they
right.
never think of this. I've
Okay.
even had other speakers say this. And this
Oh, for
and
real? All right.
of course, this comes from experience. Most of my tips come from experience.
That is a
And
good
this
thing.
I would
and
think
this is
so.
so if you're speaking in the morning, in the evening before, don't have anything salty. No pizza, no burger and fries. Okay? Yes, because you're going to be super thirsty, dehydrated, and then you're grabbing for the bottle of water that's with you on stage or on your virtual stage, and you're drinking water, and then you're starting to say to yourself, "Oh my God, I must be nervous because I'm drinking, like my mouth is dry. I'm drinking a lot of water." And then you're up because you're thinking that, and your audience is seeing this, and they're sensing your energy. They're going to start to think that you're nervous too.
Because they're seeing the physiological response to being devoid of water due to
Dehydrated.
last night's, I don't know, networking dinner, salty food, nachos, pizza, what have you,
Wow.
and your brain is also interpreting that too, and you're
Hmm.
feeling, "Okay, all right."
And so same thing, like during, like, let's just say you're speaking mid-afternoon or in the evening, make sure your breakfast or your lunch is more water content and not some salty omelet and like sausages or bacon and something like that.
Hmm. Okay.
Just thinking, have you ever had, like, a speaker who just had to use the bathroom in the middle of their hour talk then? Like, or they're, like, doing the dance, the pee-pee dance?
Like, well, time to wrap this up.
I'll be back in a few minutes, folks. I've never experienced that. But I did just recently have a friend who said, like he normally drinks X amount of ounces of water. So he was drinking extra water so that when he got to the event, then he got stuck in Boston traffic
Oh no.
and literally had to ask his Uber. He goes, I had no idea what Boston traffic was like. And he had to ask his Uber driver, can you pull over to a restaurant because he needed to use the bathroom? And he said, and then he goes, and it happened to him a little too much that particular morning, that he now is just like goes, I don't want to drink too much water either. So there is this fine line between like how much water and coffee should you be drinking before you are speaking.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah,
So that's one that most people never think of. So just be conscious of what you eat beforehand.
Right.
that makes sense.
Good tip. Good tip.
I like it.
Another that I have is more for your in-person events. And it comes from a theater thing, and it's about acknowledging the cheap seats first. So when you buy tickets to go to the theater, if you buy the tickets in the mezzanine, you're far way in the back versus the people who buy tickets close to the orchestra. So when you're speaking, I mean, just acknowledge the people that are in the back of the room and bring your eye contact to the front. Just acknowledging people so that they feel like you see them, that they're there, they matter.
Hmm. Are you saying with eye contact or like with an actual like shout out, like, hey to all
Shout
of you
out,
out there.
chest bumps,
Hey everyone.
respect.
Hey, if that's part of your personality that you want to bring to the stage, feel like do it.
Okay.
All right.
Just do it
Okay.
consistently. But it's mostly with eye contact.
Okay.
I want you to feel like you are having a conversation with each of those people. And here's another one that also reminds me of is speak to one, even though you're speaking to many. So instead of saying, "How many of you have felt?" you say, "Have you ever felt?" You're speaking to one person, but each person ends up feeling like you're speaking just to them versus like, "Who here has?" Because then people are, like, looking around like, no, that's not me. Yeah, she's not talking to me." Yeah, like, those are some of those key things that really make the audience remember you, and that's what makes, your audience rave about you, refer you, and just like, just they want to keep following you, and whoever brought you in to speak, whether you're getting paid or you're speaking for no fee, they're just gonna be like, "Wow, like, this person over-delivered," and then they're gonna be referring you to other places.
Because
Nice.
you did define being in demand as having people remember you by name and think and looking for you or calling you out by name as the person who provides a solution or the go-to expert in your niche. Maybe we have time for one more tip, but before that, I wanted to say to the listener, like if you want to be in demand, then you can head down below. There is a link. You should get this. The link is speakandstandout.com/guide. And that's where you can get Laurie-Ann's guide to figure out how to get started speaking, to grow your podcast, and exactly what to say to get more bookings and clients and opportunities. That's the part I like. But then also, like in the guide, is how to look and feel like a pro, even if you've never stepped on stage before.
Yeah. I mean, I have over 300 episodes on my podcast, so instead of telling people, like, "Go listen to all 300," it's like this guide is to help people, like, "Here are my 10 most popular episodes." And, like, you'll fit into one or a number of them. You'll find lots of resources. I think the other one that I would share with people is to stop waiting. I know this is a weird speaking tip, isn't it? Stop waiting to be invited. Get out there and let people know that you're an available speaker, that you have speaker in your bio, like claim it. Just take on the title, so that others will know, like, okay, so she's a speaker, so that when you do reach out to people or they reach out to you, you will know, like, yes, I'm a speaker and here are the topics that I speak on. Just own it. Stop waiting to be invited. I see a lot of talk online about I'm only going to speak if I'm getting paid to speak and I have to be invited. I'm like, well, that's one way of doing it, but there are 20,000 events that are happening today globally. 20,000. Now, when I went to Podfest, they had, and I don't know this number exactly, but I'm going to be conservative and say they probably had 10 breakout sessions at a time every hour. So that's 10 speakers every hour. But guess what? Podfest counts as one event, not how many speakers they needed. And that number 20,000 actually comes from MPI, Meeting Planners International. And they're basing that on hotel rooms, some sort of a function room that's being rented. But
Okay.
I am speaking
That's
here on
not
your podcast.
including virtual events.
Right.
Wow.
That does not include virtual
That
events.
number is exponentially
That's cool. I didn't pick
greater.
up on that, Jamie. Good,
Uh-huh.
good point.
So
Uh-huh.
underestimated, yes. And here in the United States, there are 225,000 associations and professional trade groups. Now, I share that with people because, like, there's an association for everything. You go to the fair, you go to the circus, there's that person that's blowing up those balloons, those cute little thin, long balloons, and they twist and they turn it into some cute little animal, and then they hand it to some little kid who gets all excited about it. Yeah, there's an association for that. Like, literally everything has an association. So I tell people, like, find the associations that have your people, that have your ideal clients, because you'll find that association in every state, and they probably have monthly meetings. They might even have virtual meetings, and chances are they have one or two conferences every single year. More opportunity to get in front of your ideal clients.
Wow. Good to know.
Shoot, maybe I should start looking up a couple of places.
I
I
think you
remember
should.
I had a lady named Kenya Kelly, video strategist, TikTok specialist, and I follow her. She was on the podcast, but then she was also in like a group coaching program that I was in back in the day. And I remember looking at her Facebook page, and she just shares basically every time she pitches herself to an event. And she shares a lot. And she also shares the successes, but then you really understand that, oh, she's on so many stages because she really does reach out to many places.
Mhm.
And it's like she's just so good at reaching out because she does it so often. And yeah, she's done the
Mhm.
reps.
Mhm.
And being outstanding on stage, like, also helps, I mean, that's like the cherry on top, but I tell people, reaching out to people is like a daily vitamin. It's something that you need to do every day. So the reason why a daily vitamin works is because you take it every single day. You don't take 7 on Sunday and expect it to work the same, so if you just get in the habit of every day, you just reach out to one person. You just build your database and just reach out to them. You can leave messages, you can send emails, but you're constantly getting in front of people, reminding them and just gathering information. Hey, when's your next conference? Like, when do you start looking and booking speakers? You're not saying book me. You're just saying, hey, I'm interested, but I want to know what your process is.
Mhm.
That's actually really
Mhm.
insightful. I like that tip to reach out. It doesn't have to be, hey, book me, can I speak? It's, hey, when's your next conference? When do you
Mhm.
start taking speaker applications or booking speakers? That's great.
Mhm.
Reach out to people and I use what I call my open the door to the conversation. So you're just asking about the process. And one gentleman, because I wasn't pitching myself to be a speaker, I just wanted to know the process. He shared with me, "Oh, that conference?" He's like, "We start planning that 18 months in advance." So I was already late to the party. Is what I'm saying. But I would not have known that unless I had just said, "Hey, what's your process?" People will tell you. They will tell you if they're the right person, that hires the speakers. They'll tell you who it is if it's not them. But you're just reaching out and just like, "Hey, I just see that you have a conference coming this fall. What's your process for finding and booking speakers?"
What's
Mhm.
your
You'll
process?
see
Write this down, Jamie. What's your
people
process?
what's your process? People will tell you what it is. One of my pet peeves is like on Facebook, some people will say like, "Hey, I'm running a summit and I need speakers. Let me know if you're interested." You have no idea what that summit is about, but all you'll see is all of these answers that say me, 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 me. And it's like you don't even know if what you speak on is like what their summit is going to be about. So I always answer with, and I, I don't always hear from them, but I usually just say, "Can you tell me a little bit more about your summit so that I can see if my topic, which is on how to leverage public speaking events, would be a good fit?"
There you go. And if you don't hear
Mhm.
back from them, it probably wasn't meant to be or not that high quality of a summit
Mhm.
anyway.
That would be the other tip that I would leave people with is don't be offended when you don't hear.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Don't be offended when you hear no, because your topic may not be of interest. I had a client and she was a business storyteller. And one of a place that was on her speaker bucket list was the marketing cruise. And she pitched them. Crickets. She pitched them the following year. Crickets. She pitched them again. Crickets. And then she finally heard from them and they said, "We would love to hire you to come and speak." Because all the other years, they probably just didn't have an interest in storytelling. It might have been some other emphasis, some other topic, some other hot topic, new trend that was big, and then finally it was, let's bring back the storytelling. So you just never know.
Right.
You never do. I see that when I follow up with potential clients. And you get ghosted or somebody doesn't respond, and your mind jumps to all these conclusions, and it almost always is something came up in their lives, and it's just there's so many different random things that happen to people.
Mhm.
And yeah, people can just not respond for a number of reasons. So we try
Mhm.
not to take it personally.
Right, right. It's a skill not to take it personally.